Now it's time to do our presentation by Dr. Gilli, and she's joining us from Zurich, and she's going to give us a presentation that is titled Mercury and its cycle in the environment. And I'm very happy to have her here. We got in a discussion some months back about Mercury, and she taught me a lot of things she's going to share with us today. And I really found it very interesting. So this isn't like a Mercury alternative thing. This is get to know your Mercury better. So this is why
Yes.
this is so fascinating.
Yes.
So
Well, and I hope that you can see my screen here. Let me share it. I hope. Do you see my screen?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can start my slideshow. Okay, well, so yeah, when Matt asked if I could give a presentation, I was really jumped at the opportunity because I have studied Mercury for a very long time, and I'm very fascinated with this element and its cycle in the environment. It's an incredibly tricky element and can be very dangerous. So I'm just going to give you a kind of a introduction to myself, who I am, a little bit about the chemistry of Mercury, but in a very simplified way so that you understand how it behaves, and then how it cycles through the environment, also what the sources of Mercury to the environment are, and the impacts that it has to the health of ourselves, but also the health of different organisms, fish in the ecosystem. So this is me. I'm Robin Gilli. I am a Swiss American. I was raised in the United States in the northwest corner of the country, in a city called Seattle, Washington. And now I live in Zurich, Switzerland, and I work for an NGO called the World Resources Forum, and we're an NGO here in Switzerland. And I'm a geologist, but I'm not just any geologist. I'm a geologist who studies rocks and minerals. So I'm a real rock nerd. I love minerals and rocks. I love, my whole house is decorated with rocks and minerals. And I'm also have a degree in environmental geochemistry. And that's really just how rocks and minerals behave in the environment. And so I work at the World Resources Forum on projects related to responsible sourcing and responsible mining. And my professional interests really lie with the ASM sector, with your sector, how we can work together to incorporate the ASM into professional mineral value chains, how we can work together to collaboratively improve the environmental, social governance of the ASM sector. And like I said, I have studied Mercury for a very long time, and as well as other elements, heavy metals in the environment. So cadmium, arsenic, lead, I've also studied those elements. And this is just a picture of me with my head in a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I just like that picture because it's silly. Anyway, but I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about Mercury. So maybe some of you know this diagram. If you can, hope you can see this diagram. It is the periodic table of the elements. So this is every element known to man in the environment, in the solar system, in the planet. And you see we have element number 1 in the corner there is hydrogen. Element number 2 is helium over in the other corner. Element number 3 is lithium, and so on and so forth. And Mercury is all the way down here. And it's element number 80. And it's so far down the table because it's really, really heavy. It is a very heavy element. Now, if you look at the table, you see all of the elements are labeled with 1 or 2 letter symbols. And Mercury is the symbol Hg. So why is Mercury Hg? So we kind of use Hg and Mercury interchangeably. And well, that's because if you were to translate Mercury, the word Mercury, into Latin, you get a word called hydrargyrum. And that means liquid silver. So we took the Hg from Latin and we used that as our symbol. Little interesting factoid. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the chemistry, and it's not as complicated as it sounds. Actually, mercury is rather rather simple element, at least on the chemistry scale. And what I want you to focus on, if you can see the diagram, what I want you to focus on is these red dots and these blue dots, right? The red dots in the center, these are positively charged particles. These are particles called protons, and they are in the center of the atom. So they're sitting there in the center. And then we have these blue particles. These are negatively charged particles, and they kind of just spin around the center, right? And just kind of spin around, and the positive and the negative, well, they balance each other out because we have 80 positive and 80 negative. So overall, net, we have a 0 charge on our mercury atom. And that's going to be really important for how mercury behaves in the environment. And this is called mercury 0. This is the liquid mercury that you all know and that gold miners use in the environment for capturing gold. So this is liquid mercury. It's also known mercury 0 or Hg 0. Now, if we look again at the atom, I want you to look at those 2 lonely blue dots on the outer ring. Now, sometimes mercury can actually lose those 2 little blue negative charged particles. And what we are left over with is 80 positively charged particles and 78 negatively charged particles, which means we have 2 more positive than negative. And this gives us a very common form of mercury in the environment called mercury 2+ or Hg 2+. And this is actually the most common form of mercury that was found naturally in the environment before we started using liquid mercury. It was because mercury 2+ is found in crystals, in minerals. So I will explain that in just a little bit. So these are two primary forms of mercury in the environment. Now, let's talk about our friend liquid mercury. So liquid mercury, or mercury 0, it's also called elemental mercury, and it is not stable in the environment. It is not stable. And this we will talk about why in just a second. But what the cool thing, crazy thing about mercury is if you look at this picture here, you see a glass of mercury filled with liquid mercury, and you see a 1 pound British coin floating on top. And that's because mercury, elemental liquid mercury, is very dense. So the 1 pound British coin floats on top because it is less dense than the mercury, the liquid mercury. So it floats. It doesn't sink, it floats. So that's pretty cool. But getting back to why liquid mercury is not stable and why this might be a problem for gold miners, well, liquid mercury is very volatile. So it's changing into a vapor without heating it. So let's just think about something, another liquid that does that is water. So if we took a bowl of water and I put it over there in the corner of the room, eventually all of that water would evaporate and I would have to fill the bowl back up with water. The same is true for liquid mercury. It is evaporating. It is, even though we are not heating it up, if I put a bowl of liquid mercury in the corner, eventually all of that liquid mercury would evaporate away. So I hope you can see this. Can you see this video? This is really a cool video to show you exactly this process. Now, when mercury or water evaporates, we don't see it, right? But it turns out if you shine a black light onto liquid mercury, you can actually see it evaporating. So I hope you can see this video. So here we go. Now, we see somebody pouring liquid mercury just into a container. Nothing's happening. Now we turn off the lights and we shine a black light. And you see immediately in the black light, the mercury vapors coming off of the liquid mercury. And so what this is important for you to know is that even though you're not heating up the liquid mercury, you are still being exposed to those vapors. So this is just liquid mercury evaporating like water evaporates. So it's really a crazy feature of liquid mercury. It's always evaporating, and that is why it's unstable. So that's liquid mercury. Now let's talk about the other form of mercury. This is the natural form. Before humans started heating up mercury and turning it into vapor, we had that mercury 2+ form, right? That's the mineral form. That's the form that we find naturally in the environment. So mercury 2+ will bond together with sulfur and make crystals of mercury. So these are minerals called cinnabar and metacinnabar. And this is mercury 2+ having bonded together with sulfur. And that is a very stable, solid mineral. And you can find, long time ago, we mined mercury. We went into the mines, we found the cinnabar and the metacinnabar, and we extracted the mercury away from the sulfur. And that's what we use today as liquid mercury. But originally, it's found in the crystal form. And mercury loves sulfur. They are madly in love, these two. They love each other. And it's because, again, of this charge balance. We have mercury 2+, and sulfur is actually 2-. So the 2+ and the 2- meet together, and they form our mineral, and it's a very stable mineral. So where do we find sulfur? Sulfur is found in organic matter. So grass, soil, leaves, there's a lot of sulfur in organic matter. And if you put mercury together with organic matter, the mercury 2+ will find the sulfur and it will form a very stable bond. So that's a really important feature of mercury 2+. So there's a third form of mercury, and this is the worst form, actually. Before mercury can find the sulfur in the soil, bacteria will find it. So mercury 2+ in the soil and in the grass, in the leaves, bacteria will take that mercury 2+. Before it can form the nice minerals, before that, mercury can take, the bacteria will take the mercury and form it into a type of a form of mercury called methyl mercury. And methyl mercury is the most toxic form of mercury. And nobody really knows why bacteria does it. They don't know why they take the mercury and change it to this terrible form, but they do. And they do it in the soil and in the lakes, in the bottom of the oceans. All of these places is where methyl mercury can form. So now if we talk about the toxicity, we rank how toxic all of these forms are. We have methyl mercury being the most toxic form, followed by our mercury vapor, that when we heat up our amalgams, the mercury vapor is very toxic. And then the liquid mercury and those mercury sulfur minerals are also very a little less toxic. They're still toxic. All forms are toxic, but they're less toxic than methyl mercury or mercury vapor. So let's talk about how it cycles through the environment. Now, this methyl mercury, once it's formed by bacteria, and if we get it into our bodies, it will bind very tightly to our muscles. So our muscles, our brain, our nerves, it bonds really tightly, and it's difficult to flush out. And this is a problem because it doesn't just get in our bodies, it gets in the bodies of fish, like you see in this diagram. And so it binds to the muscles in fish. And so let's talk about how this happens. So methyl mercury is created by the bacteria in the lake bottom, the ocean bottom, the soil, the sediments. Methyl mercury is created by bacteria. And then there's these little critters in the oceans and the lakes called plankton. And the plankton feed on the bacteria. So they eat bacteria to survive. And because the mercury is binding so tightly to the muscle tissue, the plankton will take up all of the mercury that is in the bacteria. And so it takes it up and accumulates it in its own body. And so then you have in the lakes and the oceans, smaller bottom fish that eat a large amount of these plankton. And so the smaller bottom fish take up all of the mercury in the plankton, which got it from the bacteria. And so they take it up and they accumulate it in their bodies. And then larger fish eat the smaller fish, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of always being accumulated in the food chain. And so if you see this diagram here, you sort of have the small plankton getting eaten by the larger fish, getting eaten by the larger fish, by the larger sharks, and those big predator fish, right? The sharks and the halibut. And there's actually even advice on how much of this fish you should eat per month. So you shouldn't eat halibut or tuna, albacore tuna, maybe a few times a month, but not more than that, because methyl mercury, all of the mercury found in the fish is in this form of methyl mercury. So it's really important that we understand this, because a lot of people survive around the world on fish. So then how does this play out in the environment? Well, mercury, because we're always changing mercury into a vapor, and that vapor can actually travel around in the atmosphere for a year and a half. It can go all around the globe. It goes all around the globe. Eventually, it will come back down to the soil and to the oceans, to the lakes, as mercury 2+, and it's constantly cycling between the mercury vapor and the mercury 2+. It can be changed to mercury vapor again. It's kind of always going back and forth between these two kind of forms. But then if mercury 2+ gets into the areas where there's bacteria, we can form this methyl mercury, and then the methyl mercury can eventually get into our food, into the fish. And then we consume the mercury that is in the fish, and it becomes stuck in our bodies. And so we're kind of always cycling in this global cycle. So now let's just put it into a context where you maybe are more familiar. We have the miner that's burning the amalgam. The vapor goes into the atmosphere. It can stay there for a year and a half before it comes back down in rain. And if it gets to the bacteria can change it into methyl mercury, and then it gets into our food. So it's a pretty tricky cycle to get out of, right? If we don't, we don't want to eat too much fish, but we need fish to survive. This is a very difficult situation. So what are the sources of mercury to the environment, this mercury vapor that's cycling now in our environment? Well, unfortunately, it's the burning of amalgams. So the artisanal small-scale gold mining, the burning of amalgams is the #1 source of mercury to the environment, to this cycle. And then followed by the burning of coal. We still burn a lot of coal around the world for electricity. And there's a lot of mercury in coal. So these are the 2 primary sources. And then there's other smaller sources. Talk a little bit about the impacts this cycle then has on our health. I'm sure you all are aware of some of these problems, short-term and long-term effects. We can have memory loss. We can have vision and hearing problems, even speech problems. If someone starts having excessive saliva production in their mouth, so they have too much spit, if they have a lot of saliva coming out, this is a short-term effect from mercury vapor exposure. Sometimes we can have shaking hands and arms and legs that's uncontrollable. This is also a problem. And this mercury can even affect our neurological system and our brain. It can lead to insanity. There's some cases where mercury has led to people going insane and can eventually lead to death. So it's something that we have to understand so we can prevent this. Now, there's something called Minamata disease, which is also caused by mercury, but this is caused from eating too much fish. So if I were to go eat fish for the next month, every day, 2 times, 3 times a day for the next month, by the end of the month, I would start seeing symptoms of Minamata disease because I've been exposed to too much methyl mercury. So this is this toxic form found in fish. And methyl mercury is also pretty bad because it has an effect on growing babies in the mother's womb. So we have to be very careful with mercury. And so what can we do? Well, first of all, the first and foremost, if we are burning these amalgams, we need to protect ourselves and our loved ones, the people around us, by using special masks for mercury. And they make these masks. I don't think they're too expensive. They're a special mask that has a special filter for mercury vapor. And the masks from COVID time, those simple blue masks, those do not work. It has to be a very special mercury filter inside of this mask. And this mask can last up to a month or longer, depending on how often you use the mask. So just a summary, liquid mercury is very volatile. It's evaporating, exposing us to vapors, even without heating up the liquid mercury. In the best case scenario would be if we can get our mercury bonded to sulfur, we form a very stable mineral in the environment called cinnabar and metacinnabar. If the bacteria get to it first, the bacteria will form what's called methylmercury. And this is found in fish and accumulates up the food chain and in our bodies. And we're constantly cycling between mercury 0 and mercury 2+ and mercury 0, and it leads to this kind of global cycle. And the burning of amalgams for gold and the burning of coal are the main sources of mercury to the environment, and it can cause some pretty bad things. So we need to be very careful with how we use mercury. And so I'm open for any questions that you might have, if you want to talk about anything else that I didn't get to, I mean, just let me know. I am open for questions. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Can you
maybe you can turn your screen sharing off now.
Okay.
So we can see you.
All right. How do I do that? Here. There we go. There we go.
Fascinating. Well done. That's just information I don't think that most people have seen before. But how about everybody here? Do we have questions for Dr. Gilli? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Beautiful presentation. Like, I kind of, this some understanding between how, especially when you touched on the makeup of the mercury, the structure and all that. But just a general question on being a geologist, and then you kind of have an understanding in the small scale mining sector, and the issue of mercury. What is from your experience, I mean, what is the best approach towards addressing mercury issues in the ASM sector now that, I mean, knowing that you have that background in geology and then also specialist in mercury?
Yes, it's a very good question. You know, it's a tricky subject because we know how easily mercury, mercury binds to gold, and then we can evaporate the mercury. You know, it's a very easy tool to use for gold mining. But and I'm not I'm one for complete elimination of mercury from usage in gold mining, but I know that that's a very difficult task to achieve. And so I think if we can start by using tools like retorts, where we do not expose ourselves to the mercury vapors, if we can recycle that mercury, if we're constantly capturing it so we don't release it to the environment, so we don't expose ourselves, this is maybe a first step. Eventually, we need to stop using and stop burning the mercury. So however we do that, if we do that by coming together, formalizing ourselves, working together to have better access to finance so that we get better tools and better equipment so that eventually we can stop using mercury, I think this would be the best scenario. But of course, it's very difficult. I know how easy mercury is to use it together with gold because it's very easy, but it's very dangerous to ourselves, to our families, to the people around us, and then eventually to everybody, because it's just cycling the globe. It really is. And it's a problem that we have to all address together. So
there's responsibility, like who takes care of that issue to clean up the waste mercury that was initially exposed or released into the environment. So that's one question I raised and it was never answered, and I'm raising it again to you. I believe you have connections, better connections to mercury forums, and you can raise this very, very concerning issue for many of us developing countries. Thank you.
it's a very, very insightful, good question, because historic mercury emissions, you know, in the United States, where I come from, we would have the government, if it has deemed a site to have historic emissions of any kind of contaminant, if it is deemed to be a public health issue, the government and the environmental agency in the United States would look over and propose or to include that into a program for federal funding to then clean up those historic emissions, right? So, you know, maybe it's so old,
Right.
you know, 1800 something, that the person who is responsible for that emissions is no longer, you know, obviously is not alive any longer. Maybe they don't even have a company that exists anymore. So whose responsibility is it? Now, in the US, we would say, well, the government would consider such sites for federal funding to clean it up, because first and foremost, it's a public health issue. And with respect to, you know, colonizing, you know, the colonization, I mean, that's a very complicated issue that I do not have the experience to really give a good answer. But to me, it must start with cleaning up those contaminated sites, because they are public health issues. They're public health issues to the people that live in and around that area. But then globally, mercury is a global contaminant. And so it goes around the globe. So in the end, mercury contamination anywhere is a problem for everyone, everywhere, right? And that's the tricky part about mercury. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. It is very interesting,
Thank you.
Dr. Robin. Yeah, I think your point in the last point, I think it is very interesting, because I knew in Indonesia, like in Lombok, in Sulawesi, in many area, there is a million waste of amalgamation processing were dumped in the beach, yeah, near the sea. So when there is a rain or flood, all the mercury, I think, is go to the sea. And when already go to the seas, will go around the world. Yeah. So I think this case should be the one of GCMF needs take account into this problem. Yeah. So we can start in general database, maybe from our participant in GCMF, also state that there is tailing dam from amalgamation in near the sea. I think It is. Thank you, Dr. Gil, because your explanation is very detailed, so I can show the Mercury in different perspective. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You're welcome.
That is
Of
very
course.
good, and I hope I can get the presentation.
Yeah.
Maybe I can also share to the minor. Actually, your especially your video that vapor in the black light. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Right, I found that on
Yeah.
YouTube. It was very neat. But yeah, it's a really important visual demonstration, because if we look at liquid mercury, we don't know that we are
Yeah.
being
Right.
exposed.
Yeah.
I mean, we know when we burn it, right? If we burn liquid mercury, we know.
children playing with the mercury,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
very
It's neat. It's weird.
yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird element. It's really
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. It's bad stuff.
Thank you.
I also have a question. Let's see. I think that your presentation is fantastic, and for people that use mercury or around mercury, for us to see, like, I didn't realize there's 3 different types of mercury. One, with the biological impact, the microorganisms turning it into the most toxic point. The part about the fish, is that a global recommendation, or is that on fish generally, or is that a regional thing?
It's a good question. I mean, that diagram, I think I got actually from the Environmental Protection Agency in California, which I think are specific California recommendations. The Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay has a lot of old mercury mines in and around the bay. So you have a lot of old mercury mines that are actually dumping a small amount of mercury into the bay that comes from the surrounding areas. And so the bay areas and you eat a lot of fish in San Francisco. And so they do have limits on recommendations. But I think the United States, I think other countries will also have recommendations for how much of a certain type of fish that you should eat every month. But mercury is a problem in all fish. All fish, it's a problem. No matter where you are in the world, it is a problem in all fish. And so they usually say the smaller fish, it's okay to eat, but limit the larger fish, right? Don't eat too much. Don't eat too much tuna.
Collect mercury from small fish.
Yeah, right. So don't eat a lot of small fish, but it's easy. But it's the limits are not as strict as with the big fish, right? So. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, it's really crazy.
And I want to thank you personally for coming and doing this for us, because I would like to see your presentation start being requested by more people. So I'm hoping that my leaders here with Gatot, Immaculate, even Fred, and the other people that will be watching this later, the many people due to our vast array of time differences, the video recordings are very important for us. So as they're watching this, I hope that they have a platform and that you have time to expand this message further, because it's such a fascinating element, and all we're talking about is that it's not good, you're getting sick, it's and it's not, no one's taking the time to talk about why, or the interesting nature of mercury, which gives it a real life, and it makes it more real for us to consider how we're handling it. And storing it underwater, for instance, is now makes sense with the video. And we could not present your presentation enough in my opinion, to us that use this stuff. And to Immaculate's point, we still have people dumping mercury into rivers today. You know, the Chinese like to do it, and it's happening in Asia a lot. And I hope it doesn't catch on too much here in Africa, but I'm sure some of the people here could tell us, the miners that watch our meeting could say, yeah, I probably do that. So I hope that you get the opportunity and we can take your video with your permission and post it up on our, you know, I'll edit it and cut it down to specific your presentation, if you don't mind, and share it with people and give you the credit. So because I really like your approach, you have a sincere passion for mercury and its properties, and that gives us a whole new level of respect for what we should consider when handling, you know, such a interesting element. So thank you from my.
Yes, yes, of course. And I think you know, one of the first things we could do is to provide these protective equipment, you know, these like masks that are special for mercury vapor, because first and foremost, we are miners, ASM miners are being exposed to the vapors, and that is going to have a long-term impact to their health. And so if we could first and foremost put these special masks on, we would immediately start seeing the benefits, the health benefits of the people who are working or live around or near these areas. But in the end, we need to stop using it. Yeah.
Do you have can you send us the link to the mercury
Sure.
filtered mask? Because I didn't know about that. So that's a very important thing that we'll add and promote.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a few of them. Yeah.
Okay, Fred or Justin, do you have any questions for the doctor? What we have her here specifically? Let me see if
I don't have any question, but it is a good presentation, and I'm requesting her to send the link to the document so that I can review it later.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, then yeah, thanks, Fred. And I know we'll have a lot more interest in this as people come across the video. So I'm just anyone else want to have any more questions for the doctor before we allow her to continue with her day? I just want to tell you thank you. I think your message is so important to the entire message because it adds a realness to what we're discussing. There's not it connects the PowerPoints that our leaders are listening to when they come back home and they're walking in the field and they're starting to look at the environment, with new eyes and say, oh my goodness, that mercury is evaporating right now. Like I should put it underwater. And this approach to me, I think, is the way forward to really bring home the message of starting to minimize that ongoing contribution from mining that we're doing, to go after that in a new way of consideration. So I'm just happy. I feel like today is a big success for the GCMF, and to have you here, it will ripple from here.
Thank you. Anytime.
Sorry, Matt, I have one last question.
Well, please.
So I just wanted to bring this to our attention, and for Dr. Robin to take note as well about the Minamata Convention and the fact that the convention is a very high-level piece of policy document, I think. But implementing that policy, or that whatever is done at that level, down to the very lowest level where miners are is to me is problematic because in our countries, we don't have specific policies that captures this international policy about what they're trying to do at the international level to address mercury issues. And if we are going to go and start conducting awareness and training and telling our people to not use mercury or try to use mercury free equipment, it won't be practical because there are no local policies. There are no local policies to tell people that, look, this is mercury usage is illegal. You're not supposed to be using it because of its effects on the environment and health. So I just feel that there is a gap. There is a missing link between these international conventions and policies drawn up, connected down to the people who are actually using mercury and affecting themselves. So I wanted to raise this, like, when they are talking about these issues at the international level, they should look at mechanisms on how to translate all this down to people's level and assist with policies, especially help local governments, help the national governments to draw up policies to reflect what's been discussed at the international level. So that's just a point that I wanted to raise.
I'd like to say something on that. Immaculate, imagine that we put together a curriculum with the PowerPoint and Dr. Gill's presentation and put it and advocated to have that put into schools in mining areas so the kids would understand what's happening with that, the elements that are happening around them. I think that's something that would be very, very interesting, because I found this very interesting, very intriguing to my, to the whole, like, it's not just mercury's bad, it's like, look close, this stuff is really crazy, this stuff is really moving around. And can you imagine, like, if we started with the school systems, just, and then the kids are going home saying, hey, mom, you need to put that underwater, don't, and start from different angles like that. Like, I think kids would be fascinated with this, 100%. They'd look at that stuff and they'd have a whole new respect. Well, that's what I'm envisioning there when you speak, Immaculate. Some connection there to bridge that gap, because I agree, there's a massive gap.
Yeah, that's why we need a global community forum. This is because that's gap. Yeah.
Yes.
From with global community miner forum, we will through the gap. Yeah. So we can bring Dr. Gill directly to the ground. Yeah, like this.
Yeah,
But I have one opinion or question, Dr. Robin. I think to stop or to reduce miner using mercury is same important to clean up exposed mercury that already in the environment. I think it is same important. Yeah. So actually we need big efforts to clean up the mercury that already exposed to the environment. Thank you.
I was thinking, mine is more of an opinion. As part of an agenda with GCMF, we should drive more of educative educative more of educative lessons on prognosis of mercury, mostly in babies and children, because most of them are not really directly involved in it, but through maybe their parents, like the way now we've learned how it starts from the fish to the moment the fish is taken in as food. So some prognosis should be laid out on how to handle Minamata diseases in children and babies.
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, Doctor, what do you think about all this feedback, and what else do you want to share with us before we allow you to
Well,
go? This point is fantastic.
well, I completely agree with the education aspect, starting from the youth to try to for them to understand the mercury in the environment, but also education of adults, so people who use this, or even people who are exposed to this. You know, it's education is not just for children, it's for adults. And if we can collaboratively work together to find solutions to not use mercury and still be effective at gold mining, ASM mining, if we can come together to get access to finance, to buy good equipment, to work together to educate ourselves and our communities and our children, you know, if we can do things more efficiently, mine more efficiently, and not use mercury, you know, that's for me the ultimate goal, is to collaboratively work together to try to get access to this equipment that will allow the miners not to use mercury and still mine as efficiently. And this to me is really important. And then education of young and old, everybody, you know, you never stop learning, never ever stop learning. So it's really important to me as well, these things. And so I don't know, I'm always advocating, trying to find ways to have new projects involving exactly this topic. So, and I agree, it's difficult with the Minamata Convention to come from such a high level down to the ground level. How do we implement all of this from the top to the bottom? It's something that I'm still very passionate about and interested in, and will continue to work for that. So that's all.
Well, I appreciate that. There's one other thing. I think we can get close to wrapping up our meeting here, but Justin and I are working on getting Planet Gold to print a simple chart we made, the Gold Miners Wellness Checklist, which includes the symptoms of mercury.
Yeah.
But something like your presentation here that you've given us today, I was also thinking of a curriculum that we could say, listen, we want special curriculums inside the institutions in mining areas, and starting with schools, and just add it to the basic curriculum. So once a quarter or something, there's a highlight on what's happening in the mining community specifically. And so I would like the GCMF to organize that, and Justin being actually a key figure in Kenya to be able to connect these things. I'd just like to see you that as Justin is worth doing this first step to bridge something from GCMF to the ground, funded by Planet Gold. We'd also like to consider what you're presenting on mercury to be part of that curriculum to pitch, to say, let's not stop with meetings with our mining leadership. I mean, we've been teaching the same people the same thing for over a decade, but not giving anything, any consideration to putting them out in the field and giving them resources to go out with a curriculum to train actual miners or the mining community. So with your permission, Dr. Gilli, I would like to start to talk in that dialogue of including your presentation into our next step. So when we're going to pick up our global mining wellness checklist, we tell Planet Gold we've got one other thing. And if we can push it in Kenya and it works, and we're able to take our chairmen out to on the field presenting this material, I think that bridges a lot of that gap, and it gives our chairmen also a real respect on the ground too, because now they brought something home. So that's the vision we're looking at here that Gatot and I talk about. So
Great. Well, I would love to be a part of it. So just let me know.
okay, that sounds great. Chairman, do you have anything else you want to add? I think we don't have to take the meeting any further. We're going to end on a high note this week, I think, unless you have anything else you need to discuss. I think.
Yeah, I think we need to highlight the danger of mercury as the public enemy, the public threat. Yeah, so when there is disposal or telling that contain mercury, should be the responsible of government and also international organization, not only local people. So when we saw or we find the matter like this, we can bring to the international level to talk about it and how to solve the matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well done. And for me, that's it. And Chairman, do you have anything else you want to add, or can we close it out?
Usually I hear 1 hour more presentation about mercury and I don't understand.
Yeah.
But Mr. Dr. Jill only 20 minutes, but it's very bright for me to understand the problem.
Yes. Yes, it's true. It's the most valuable presentation on Mercury I've seen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, then we'll close it out then, Chairman and Doctor and Fred and Justin and everyone else. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again. And we'll do another meeting in 2 weeks, right, Chairman?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending the meeting. Yeah.
All right, everybody, have a great day. If you have any questions, Dr. Gill's part of our community, so you can reach out to her. I'm sure it's no problem. And thank you very much, and enjoy the cold weather. And we will be here if you want to join us. We're back near the equator where it's nice and smooth and comfortable. So, all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you guys all in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.